Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this Change Board webinar, Making an Impact with Analytics. How can you drive business performance with people data? My name is Euan Haldane, and I'm Change Board's Head of Innovation. And we're delighted to be joined today by Richard Doherty, Senior Director of Product Marketing at Workday, and Euan Robertson, Director of HR Information Systems at Smith Nephew. Euan will be providing a practical perspective on how to create the case for people analytics and driving its effectiveness, while Richard will discuss Workday's latest survey of 3,852 business professionals in conjunction with the CIPD, which reveals how organizations currently use analytics to understand people data. But just before we begin, I'd like to run through a few guidelines. Throughout the webinar, if you'd like to pose a question or a comment to Richard or Euan, please enter this in the question box on the right-hand side of your screen and click send. And we'll be taking questions after the presentation, but feel free to pose your questions at any time, and we'll try to get through as many as we can later on. We'll also be running a live Twitter feed throughout the webinar, so be sure to label your tweets with @ChangeBoard, @Workday, and @Smith Nephew PLC. We'll also be recording the webinar, so we'll send you a link to the full recording in the next few days. And now, without further ado, and to start the presentation, I'll hand over to you, Richard.
Thanks very much, Euan, and good afternoon, everyone. And just a quick heads up for everyone, we're having two Euans involved in this preparation for this webcast didn't cause any confusion or issues at all. It did really, but anyway. So let me walk you through what we're going to cover in the next. One second. Let me just get the slides up. 1 second. Okay. Okay. Now I just need to share my screen. There we go. Okay, great. So. Click through. There we go. So there's me on the left-hand side, and we have Euan over on the right. And Euan, I'm going to cover the first section of the webinar, just talking about this people analytics research and some of the key findings that have come out of that. And then I'm going to hand over to Euan, who's really going to share his story. He's been on a people analytics journey. He's built people analytics teams. And he has an awful lot of very interesting insight to share. And then we'll leave plenty of time at the end to answer any questions that you might have. So, last year, Workday, we partnered with the CIPD on what I would characterize as some very interesting people analytics research. The full research is available to download from the Workday website, so workday.com. So please, if the summary I'm going to give you is interesting, please do go to the website to download it. And as well as providing you with a summary of the research, I also want to provide you with some perspectives on those results using the lens as a HR systems vendor and a people analytics vendor. So that's what I'm going to cover. Now, in terms of the survey, it was quite a large-scale survey. It was very international. It was really important to us that we were able to gain international perspectives on how organizations use people analytics. And we surveyed, over 3,800 business professionals from the UK, Ireland, US, Middle East, and North Africa, and Southeast Asia for their views on how their organizations use people analytics to understand people data. And these are the key topics in the research that we explored. So we wanted to try and understand how people analytics is influencing organization level outcomes, such as performance and culture. What's the alignment there? And interestingly, we gathered people analytics perspectives from not only HR, but also from finance professionals and other parts of the business. So we gained this outside-in view. Or insight into people analytics. We also took the temperature of HR professionals to measure how confident they are in their ability to deliver people analytics. And then finally, we explored how is people analytics actually being used to try and understand the business challenges and perhaps the people risks that organisations are facing. So the first area of interest is around what we're calling a people analytics culture. And we wanted to understand what are the attributes of an organisation with a strong people analytics culture. And when I say a people analytics culture, it means an organisation that efficiently and effectively leverages people analytics for business advantage. And start thinking in your own minds, do you feel that you are in such an organisation? Does your organisation have that strong people analytics culture? Now, using the data from the research, we were able to identify 3 key attributes of organisations that have strong people analytics culture. Firstly, they have line managers who actively seek out people data to make their business decisions. The people dimension, it isn't an afterthought or not even considered. It's central to business decision making. Secondly, they have management teams that frequently speak about the value and importance of people data. So effectively, they have executive sponsorship or buy-in for people analytics. And that was typically from very senior levels in the business, leading by example, you could say. And finally, these organizations actively use people data to tackle business problems. You're not just using people analytics to solve HR problems, it's to solve business problems. Okay, so at this point, we want to have our first poll. So if Change Board could pop up the poll, and if everyone wants to see the poll, if you could answer the poll. Here we go. So the poll is, does your organization have a people analytics culture? So if you could either respond to that yes or no, and then I'll ask Change Board to share the results when they feel they have enough response. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, so let me, if I drag that onto my other screen, no, okay. So hopefully you can all see the results of that poll. So yeah, it's only a minority, just under a quarter of you feel that you're in organisations with a strong, people analytics culture, and frankly, no real surprise there. So thank you for sharing that. Now, if I go to the next slide, let me click on there. Okay, there we go. We asked the same kind of question in the survey, in the research, and we had similar results, but we also asked or tried to find out what kind of correlation was there between this having a strong people analytics culture and overall business performance. And to do that, we surveyed non-HR professionals, and it's important that it wasn't HR professionals, because again, we want this outside-in view. As HR professionals, we could be slightly biased if we were asked to answer that question. And we surveyed them on the impact of people analytics in their business. And we found that people analytics culture is strongly associated with overall business performance. 65% of those from organizations with a strong people analytics culture reported strong business performance, compared to only 32% of those from organizations with a weak people analytics culture reporting strong performance. So there does seem to be this strong alignment. If you have a strong people analytics culture, the perception is you have a strong business performance. And the difference between those two is, it's a significant 33-point difference. So now let me put my Workday lens on it and give you some insight into that survey result. So, how do you get to that point of a strong analytics culture? And, I would argue, and you might say, well, you would anyway, but I would argue that HR technology is the key enabler. If people data is scattered across various systems and spreadsheets in different formats and different security models controlling access, getting insight from that data can be very difficult, if not impossible. Companies in this situation who want to run people analytics projects, they'll typically extract the HR data from the various systems, load this data into a third-party data warehouse, and use external third-party business intelligence tools or the tools available in the data warehouse to extract the information and drive the analytics. Now, the problem with that approach is it's complex. The data is stored in different formats with different coding that requires mapping, data cleansing, and so on. And so the data gets old, and decisions are often made on out-of-date information because it's too difficult to keep refreshing that information on a regular basis. So I would say, if you haven't already, a good first step on the people analytics journey is to bring all of the people transactional data into a single system, or as few systems as possible. For many of you, it's going to be difficult to have a single system, but really try and rationalize and have as few systems as possible. And nirvana, is to have a single system. And that's certainly possible, as we see with many Workday customers, they're doing exactly that. And once you have all of that data in as fewer systems, or perhaps in a single system, the analytics can then be layered on top of that very firm foundation for your people analytics endeavor. Okay. The second area of interest, or area of focus in the research, was on how people analytics are actually being used in anger, if you like. Now, the survey found that HR professionals are using people data to tackle significant challenges that their organizations are facing. As we can see from this bar chart, 75% of HR professionals globally are tackling workforce performance and productivity issues using people data. So we can see that organizations are using people data to tackle the most difficult people-related business challenges. And we all know productivity is one of those key challenges. Now, the research also indicated that visibility of data, for instance, via dashboards, correlates with improved business outcomes. But access to the data differs by profession, with, unsurprisingly, HR having the best levels of people data access. So as we can see from the graph here, with 71% of HR professionals having access to people data, while only 42% of finance professionals have such access. And in my experience, the further away from HR you are, typically the less access to people data you have. So how can we improve access to people data? Because it's critical for business performance. And how can we improve access to people data and analytics to both HR and non-HR stakeholders? Well, as I mentioned earlier, many organizations take their people data out of their HR systems, and they use third-party reporting tools to generate reports and analytics. And they do this because the HR systems that they're using have limited reporting capabilities. Now, the problem is that the external reporting systems have a separate security model to the HR systems. So these external reporting systems don't know who should be able to access what people data, meaning that reports often have to be distributed manually to avoid sharing sensitive data with the wrong people. And that clearly acts as a barrier to people data access. You want self-service access to these kind of reports and analytics. Now, if the reporting is embedded directly in the HR system, you don't have this problem. The system already knows who can access what data. So straight away, barriers to data access are removed, and managers, whichever function they're in, can self-serve reporting and analytics. So, choosing a HR system with strong reporting capabilities will help open up people data to the whole organization. Okay, the next area. The question here we wanted to answer was, does HR have the skills and confidence to undertake advanced levels of people analytics? So, we found that globally there are differences in confidence levels, and we found that it does differ quite significantly across regions. And as we move to more advanced techniques, unsurprisingly, so that's from left to right in that chart, unsurprisingly, confidence drops because it's getting more difficult. And the UK has the biggest drop in confidence as we move to more advanced techniques, with only 21% of UK HR professionals comfortable with the most advanced analytics techniques, compared to 46% in Southeast Asia. Okay, can we, change board, can you start the second poll, please? So, question is, does your HR team have demonstrable numerical and statistical skills? So simple yes or no on that one. And then basically I'm going to compare and contrast the results to the survey. Okay, let's have a look at the results. So 42% of you believe that yes, you have those skills, compared to 58% saying no. Okay, interesting. Right, so we're going to go back to the slides now. And let's drop through to the next slide. So we found in the survey, so we asked the same question to HR, and then we asked the same question to other parts of the business to compare, and we found that ultimately HR had a higher opinion of its people analytics capabilities than other parts of the business. Suggesting almost that a charm offensive may be required to convince the rest of the business what we're capable of. One final statistic to share with you that isn't shown on this slide is that even though 21% of UK HR professionals who were surveyed are either confident or very confident in using advanced analysis techniques, only 6% of UK HR professionals say they use these skills in their day-to-day role. And that suggests to me a missed opportunity for HR in the UK. The skills are there, but they're not being used. Now, building the skills and confidence in people analytics in HR, should be a key priority. We've already established that correlation between people analytics and business performance and strong business performance. But building that capability, may be difficult for some organizations. We're not all a Google or an Amazon, with legions of data scientists, knocking on the door, waiting for the next people analytics challenge to solve. So, if you don't have those resources, if you don't have the budget, or if you're a smaller organization, what should you do? Well, HR systems like Workday, we're seeking to bake in advanced people analytical capabilities directly into the HR system. For instance, Workday includes as standard advanced predictive analytics around employee retention risk. Which it's machine learning. It checks for patterns in the underlying data to be able to predict whether someone is exhibiting attributes of an employee who may be at risk of leaving. Now, for an individual organization to build such an algorithm would be difficult and expensive and time-consuming. With Workday, retention risk is packaged into the HR system. All you need to do is provide the data. And then this is like enhanced business intelligence to augment the manager and provide them with data-driven assistance for decision-making rather than them having to solely use their intuition. And such an approach as that, it's really democratizing access to advanced people analytics. It's not going to be just the preserve of large enterprises anymore. Okay, you can't really talk about people analytics without talking about data protection and risk. Data protection and managing people risk is a high priority for all organizations. Last year, we saw the introduction of the updated data protection rules in the EU with the GDPR, that necessarily gave us all a focus on this key area. So we asked our survey respondents how confident were they that their workforce data is adequately protected, and around 2/3 across the professions were confident, which to me, personally, I thought it was quite low. I want to be much higher than that. There also seems to be relatively low confidence in the underlying systems that secure the workforce data. and on joined up organizational strategies for protecting that data. So, we're 9 months or so into GDPR, and it does sound like there's plenty to do. Now, we all know that GDPR has been a huge wake-up call for HR, and we've seen many organizations transition from older systems to Workday, for instance, because of GDPR compliance needs. We're also seeing organizations revisit their people analytics strategy as a result. As I mentioned earlier, many organizations extract people data from their HR systems into data lakes and third-party reporting systems, where the people data is often combined with other corporate data to help answer business questions. Now, the problem with such an approach is that HR starts to lose control of the people data as soon as it leaves the HR system, and there are concerns over controlling access to the people data in these external systems. So, in an ideal world, we believe that people data should not leave the HR system. It's secured there, and GDPR compliance needs are addressed. If there's a business need to combine people data with other corporate data, then bring that corporate data to the HR system. And of course, make sure that your HR system has strong reporting and analytics capabilities. Okay, last couple of slides. We also, we investigated the quality of people data available to understand key people-related risks, things like skills shortages, gender equality, and turnover. And while data quality is often highly rated, risk management of these key areas is viewed as ineffective, which is odd, as you would think that the data quality would be the main blocker. It could be that the lack of confidence shown by HR in exploiting the more advanced people analytics techniques is having an impact here. So HR systems that bake in the more advanced people analytics, effective at managing these people risks, will help overcome this lack of confidence. If you combine the baked-in people analytics in the HR system with the additional confidence that using the HR system security model to ensure that people only see the data they're supposed to see, organizations can then push out the people analytics necessary to manage these people risks directly to the front lines, the people managing the people, where the risks are most effectively managed. So a few last words, and I'm going to hand over to Euan, who's going to share his experience. So, I stepped through each of those points. People analytics, it's good for business performance. Access to data is key. We need to up our skill level in HR. And also we need to go on this charm offensive to share the richness of the value that we can add to the business. And then from a systems perspective, if you can, try and keep all of your people data in one place. Look for HR systems that have embedded rich reporting and analytical capabilities. And then finally, as much as you can, keep the HR data in your HR system. Okay, I'm now going to hand over to Euan.
Thank you very much, Richard, and hello, everybody. First of all, I think it's really interesting research and certainly reflects what I've seen in the market and what I hear when I speak to people. So, just always good to see what's happening in the market and what other HR companies are doing.
Good to hear.
And I'd first of all just introduce myself to you all. So first of all, who am I and why am I here today? So my name is Euan Robertson. I'm currently the Director of HRIS at Smith Nephew. I've been in the world of HR systems for just over 10 years now. So I actually started off as a SAP consultant at Npower, moved to Coca-Cola, where I set up a reporting team using SuccessFactors and SAP. And at Deloitte, I also did some work in the human capital analytics function as well, before I actually moved into the Workday world about 4.5 years ago at a company called Brambles. At Brambles, I was responsible for setting up their reporting analytics function, and then have recently, just over a year ago, moved to Smith Nephew as a Director of HRIS, where again, we're using Workday, and we've had a very heavy focus on improving our reporting analytics and really bringing data to the core of what we do. So I've been in and around reporting, data analytics, probably for the last probably 7 or 8 years of my career. I'm also the founder of the UK Reporting Analytics user group for the Workday customer community, and regularly share ideas and opportunities with other customers, learning from them, and also allowing them to learn from what we've done as well. So hopefully some good experience there, and what I'd like to do today is just bring some of the lessons I've learned along our journey, the roadmap that we've built and the journey that we've been on to show how we've really led and built things in the reporting and analytics space. And hopefully a lot of the things that I talk about today will compound some of the things that we've heard from the survey as well. So first of all, just a little note about Smith Nephew, for those of you that don't know Smith Nephew. So Smith Nephew are a leading medical technology company. We have our products in over 100 countries, and we actually have employees in about 46 countries. Our main 4 areas of business are sports medicine, orthopedic reconstruction, trauma and extremities, and advanced wound management. So if you know somebody who's got a knee replacement or has had shoulder surgery, more than likely they would have come into contact with the Smith Nephew product. We have about 16,000 employees globally at the moment, and we're part of the FTSE 100, as I've said. The other thing probably just to note very quickly is I run the whole of the HRIS team, so I do have dedicated reporting and analytics resource within my team, but I also have different team members that look after different streams of the HR system. So we have a specialist in what we call core HCM and security. We have a recruiting specialist. We have a talent and performance specialist. We have compensation and benefits specialist, and then we have someone looking after integrations. So the reporting resource really works across all of those work streams in partnership with each of those leads. But for me, having a dedicated reporting analytics person or team in your organization is one of the critical things that you will need if you want to be successful in the reporting analytics area. I've seen lots of companies that have tried to do it, with part FTE or as a side to somebody's job, but quite often the reporting gets deprioritized and other projects get over-prioritized. So that's one of the big things that I would call out in my journey, is that having a dedicated head or a team that can help you drive that reporting analytics journey is something that's critical to your success as well. So what is it that we're all trying to do, and what is the ultimate goal? Fundamentally, we as an HR function want to make decisions based on data and not our gut instinct. So we are sat on a ton of data in Workday. Really, it's about how we can leverage that data and get the most value and use from it. We have performance ratings, we have all of our employee history, we can see all the promotions and demotions, we can see what our turnover rates are, what our attrition is. So how do we use all of that information to actually make decisions that will impact and benefit the business? That's really the core of what we're trying to do. And really, driving better business outcomes by using your data in a sensible and smart way. I think, as Richard already referred to, there's an increasing demand from what I've seen from senior leadership teams, particularly, and executive leadership teams around, how can we really measure our workforce, and how can we predict what's going to happen before it actually happens. So lots and lots of things happening there. And really, what we're trying to do as an organization is leverage our data, but also drive some automation and self-service so that we don't end up becoming, a single point of failure as an analytics function, but really we're enabling the business to do their own analytics and their own investigation and to also answer their own questions. So some of this is about training and educating and bringing others on that journey with you. So what does all of that mean for us at Smith Nephew, and particularly for me, my team, and the HR function? So I've listed out 6 things that we're really trying to do that are going to help take us to the next level when it comes to both reporting and analytics. One is the design and implementation of high-quality leadership dashboards, not just for the HR leadership team, but also being able to push out metrics for each of the business leaders so they can see what's happening in their organization at any point in time. All of those dashboards are very nicely customizable, driven by security in the system. So if a leader, for example, in one region looks at one dashboard, they'll get their population, and another leader in a different region can look at exactly the same dashboard and see their population. So again, driving self-service and having some standardization is at the forefront of everything that we're trying to do. We also are trying to drive standardized HR reporting. When I inherited the team, I think we had about probably 30 or 40 different versions of our employee list report, some of which had far too much sensitive data in. So we've also gone back to the HR community and given them some standardized reports that they can use. We actually provided an HR reporting catalog, which gives them, the top 20 or 25 reports that they would need to do 90 to 95% of their roles. And that has been a huge success. We drive a lot of flexibility in there, so they can run it for different countries, different locations, different org units, but we drive them all to the same report so that we have standards, we can guarantee data quality, and we have everybody really working from the same hymn sheet. The third one here is about self-service, and everything we're trying to do is about empowering managers, empowering employees themselves. So wherever we can, whether it's HR or in the business, we always try and drive self-service. Particularly HR, sometimes they will come to us and ask us to run a report for them. And if they actually have the access to the data and access to a report, we will make sure that, we train them, we educate them, we take them on the journey. But even for the HR team, the value really is in them having the access to the data at their fingertips, which is secured in the appropriate way. If we need to run a report for them, quite often there might be a 4 or 5 day SLA for us to get the data to them, and we're actually at risk of security exposures. So generally speaking, we will always try and push for self-service as much as we can. I think it's also very important to define your global reporting standards. So as I said, my team, we inherited a very long list of reports, a lot of inconsistencies. We also found a lot of reports that had errors. So the first thing we've done is really take back control and put some good standards in place, whether it's about the naming conventions of your reports, naming conventions of calculated fields and logic in the system, and also putting in processes for report requests, for data requests, so that you're never exposed to any data breaches. So I think that's always something to do. And again, overall governance of the HR reporting environment. So quite regularly we'll get requests for new reports or changes to reports from HR, but our responsibility as a group is to make sure that we don't just create a huge catalogue of reports that are very similar, but we actually give something that's concise, that's useful, that's easy to find and flexible to run. And then finally, my team, I always want us to be forward-looking and improving things. So a big focus is about how do we implement new functionality? How do we bring new things to the table for HR and for managers? How do we really start to push predictive analytics in the future? So we're always trying to look ahead. There are always things to fix behind, but we always try and push to the next thing as well. So I just thought I would share very quickly the kind of reporting and analytics journey that I've been on, not once now at Smith Nephew, but actually 3 times through my experience at Coca-Cola and Brambles and Smith Nephew. So there is no magic dust when it comes to building, a good reporting analytics function. You won't be able to just pick up technology and flick a switch and you suddenly have everything you need. First of all, you really have to start with the basics. So definitely learn to walk before you try to run, because without strong foundations, I think you'll really struggle to build good, capable analytics in the future. So first of all, data standards, data integrity and data quality, they're absolutely fundamental to everything that you do. If you don't have good, reliable data quality, then as soon as you start to push these reports out to HR, to the management teams, to your leadership teams, they'll come back with questions, and they'll ask why the data is not reliable, why they're seeing 2 different numbers. So having those standards and having that integrity is really, really critical. At Brambles, we also developed a very robust kind of HR monthly reporting and dashboard pack, and we very specifically included clear definitions at the end of that, so that when we explain turnover, this is how it's calculated. When we look at hiring rates, this is how it's calculated. And having those clear definitions and setting those expectations is really important. I think also making sure you have the basics in terms of your employee listings, your data extracts, all set up and working well. That will help to build the confidence in your data, the confidence in your reporting, but it will also help to very quickly identify, those opportunities for improvement where you may have some data inconsistencies and you may need to do some work before you go further along your journey. So in both of the organizations where I've used Workday, we have started off from an area where our data quality wasn't as good as it could have been. We had built far too many reports and we had no consistency around them. So the first thing we did was build an HR reporting catalog, make sure that we rationalize our catalog of reports, put some data quality controls in, and that really has held us in good position to move forward up through this value chain. The second step in the process is more consolidated reporting. So that's how do we combine our core people data with more talent data, compensation data, and really look at process-specific and cross-functional analytics within HR. That then will lead nicely onto what I would call kind of basic analytics. So for me, that is, getting the dashboards out to HR that they might need. It might be looking at trend of turnover rates. It might be looking at trend of hiring rates, headcount, FTE at any point in time. I think when I joined Brambles, believe it or not, we actually didn't know the complete FTE in our organization. We had 2 people in Japan that people didn't know that they actually existed until we put Workday in place and had much better controls around our people data. So for me, basic analytics is about putting those tools in the hands of HR and then starting to look at how you can trend the data, how you can look at cross-functional analytics, and how you can really start to get value from all of that HCM data that you have. And then further up the value chain, we actually have cross-process and functional analytics and predictive analytics. And this, for many companies, is the holy grail. So this is where really, you want to start thinking about pulling your finance data in, your CRM data into the system, whether it's service center tickets. How can you map that against your employee structures? And I think, as Richard referred to in the presentation, for us, having that core foundation of HR data, so we can, in Workday, very easily report on what country, division, location, management chain people are in. And once we start to overlay that data with financials and targets and employee performance data, it really gives you a rich picture of what's happening. And for me, the critical thing is having that one security role that wraps around all of this data so that everything can be run self-service. I've seen some other companies who have plugged analytics tools on top of their HCM platforms. And while that can be good as a short-term fix, you end up having to maintain 2 security models. There's a time lag between the data being transferred. Quite often you have to have mapping tables in between. So it's a huge resource investment, when having everything in one place is certainly a big benefit. So just want to talk about some of the best practices for getting started with your report analytics journey. First of all, definitely invest in top-down sponsorship from your leadership. When I was at Brambles, our head of HR was previously a CFO, and his mantra was, let's manage HR by metrics. And very quickly, the rest of the HR organization, who you probably wouldn't have seen ever using data in the past, were coming to his meetings with dashboards, with metrics, with SLAs, and that really changed behavior. So top-down sponsorship is essential. Training and education for all of HR and also the business is very important too. So whenever we launch new functionality, whether it's our manager reporting workflow that we've launched recently or our HR report workflow, we will always do training and follow that up with more refresher training. Providing the tools and providing the data is one thing, but making sure that your HRBPs and your HRGs or HR group know how to use that data and know how to access it is also critical. So never underestimate in your training and education. Partner with other companies and other customers. I am always happy to share ideas and always happy to work with others. Earlier this week, I was helping Western Union with some of their report analytics capability and building their team. And I've also learned a lot from other Workday customers at some of the user groups that we run. So, obviously, if it's a direct competitor, maybe a slightly different story, but, the more you can share with others, the better. And actually, there's always something you can learn from others too. So both be open to share, but also open to learn and listen. Clean and reliable data will obviously underpin everything that you do when it comes to reporting analytics. So I'm sure I've probably said enough about that already, but that has to be something that you actively prioritize and monitor if you really want to drive valuable analytics in your organization. And also win leadership trust in data with your executive level insights. So, when we went live with all of our new HR dashboards at Brambles, we did a kind of show and tell to the executive leadership team, and I demoed it to the CEO, the CFO, and they loved it because they'd never seen information like that before coming out of an HR tool. The more you can share with them and the more early insight you can give to them, the better. And the other thing I was discussing with Richard earlier was, making sure you're delivering the metrics that they need to see or they really have passion about is also something you want to consider. So engage your stakeholders both within HR and in your leadership teams early and kind of take them on the journey with you, and it will certainly help you deliver a lot of value in the company. As I said, automation, self-service is at the heart of everything that we do. We don't have an enormous analytics team that runs reports for everybody. We have one person that covers 16,000 employees in 48 countries at the moment. So driving self-service and really selling the benefits of self-service is something that's critical as well. I'm sure managers would be much happier to hear that they can run a report themselves and get the data in 30 seconds rather than they have to submit a ticket and wait 4 days. So taking, again, managers on that journey and providing the tools for them to run those reports is critical. And finally, this is continuous improvement at its heart. So maintain, monitor, and keep improving the things that you're doing. Just because you've built a report today doesn't mean it's going to be fit for purpose in 6 months' time. So again, this is where I think investing in the resource, so having a dedicated report analytics person that can help drive these things will really help you jump ahead in your journey. But you just remember that there is continual work to do here. This is not a kind of one-stop project. This is the ongoing piece of work to continue to improve, to release new functionality, and to build better tools for your end users. And finally, I just wanted to do a very quick showcase. In the past, I've actually done some demos for people, but I'll just do I've done a couple of screenshots for this session because I'm hoping there are a few questions from you all. But what does success look like? So I've just popped up a few examples from both my Smith Nephew days and my Brambles days about what people analytics can and could look like. So the top left screenshot with the blue header, you can see that's our core HR dashboard, which all of the HR teams could access and run for their own populations, whether they support a country, a region, or a specific management group. As you can see there, we've got turnover rate, voluntary, involuntary, and total, hiring trends by gender, and we have a whole list of other dashboards down the left-hand side that they can run. So headcount FTE by country, management to employee ratio, so kind of a different way of looking at spans of control, monthly number of terminations, trended, lots of different metrics for HR to access. In the top right, we've got our performance management dashboard, which shows a kind of snapshot in time of where we are as an organization when it comes to objective setting, end of year performance reviews, and our development planning. There's 3 screenshots in the bottom left are actually extracts of our monthly dashboard, which went up to the HR leadership team and also the ExCo. And again, this, we actually, although these metrics were in PowerPoint, they were all referring back to reports in Workday. So if an individual leader or an individual HR VP wanted to go and find the headcount and FTE specifically for their group, yes, we have the global numbers that they can use as a benchmark, but they can also go into Workday and run exactly the same report themselves. So we're not building, multiple versions of dashboards for multiple different HR VPs because it just would be impossible. But instead, we're really pushing them towards self-service and saying, look, this is the end-to-end dashboard for global HR, but you can go in and get all of these metrics yourself from Workday self-service whenever you need them, and share them with your business leader, which I'm sure they would love to see. And then on the furthest right, this is one of the HR dashboards that we developed for the Smith Nephew leadership team. And one of their requirements was to have, a turnover dashboard to have everything on one page. So here I've got headcount, number female, number of hypos, managers, terminations, voluntary terminations, and that then translates to turnover rates, voluntary turnover rates, manager turnover, hypo turnover, female turnover. We've got 6-month, 1 year, 2-year turnover rates, and sales family turnover. So, again, we can provide the tools for them to run all of these metrics self-service for their own population. They can drill into the details, they can filter it for different groups, and where possible, we really want it kind of one report to fit all uses. So we won't be building them multiple turnover reports. We'll really try and get all of them working from the same metrics and from the same page. And that leaves us, I think, about 15 minutes for questions at the end. So thank you very much, everybody, for your time, and hope you found both Richard's research and some of my insight valuable, and we will open for questions.
That was excellent. So change board, Euan, have you got any questions that you'd like to ask?
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Richard and Euan. We've got a few questions in. If it's okay, I'll ask you them maybe 3 at a time, just for speed. So the first one, quite a simple one. It's for you, Richard. You mentioned at the start the CIPD report, and somebody's just wondering where they can get hold of that. There's a question around, in terms of the things that are analysed, can you give a bit of flavour, a bit of granularity about the kind of metrics that are analysed? So you talked about productivity, for example, but what kind of things specifically might be measured? So just to give a bit of a flavour of that. And then a question, quite a fundamental one, about where should somebody start when building a people analytics team from scratch, and associated to that. 20 rule. If you just have one or two metrics to use, are there one or two that would give you the most value out of everything else?
Okay, thank you, Euan. So I'll take the first one. So that's an easy one. So to download the CIPD report, just go to www.workday.com/UK, and then on the home page, I think there's a link through to download the report. Otherwise, just put it to CIPD in the search box, and you'll be returned a link to access that report. On the sort of metrics, I'd like, Euan, can I ask you, because obviously this is your bread and butter and has been.
Yeah.
What kind of metrics are you finding are the most useful for the organisations that you've worked for?
Yeah. So I think, well, there seems to be a very heavy focus on the moment on diversity, particularly pay diversity and turnover metrics in pretty much every organisation I've spoken to. I think attrition and cost management seems to be one of the high priorities for most organisations, to understand how can they reduce their attrition, how can they keep their costs down when they're going through transformation programs and lots is happening on the ground. But the other thing that I have done in the past is go out to senior leadership teams with a kind of human capital metrics survey where I'll basically break it up into 5 or 6 different categories. So it might be around core HCM, talent, your kind of pipeline of hires and terms, and I ask them, out of these 6 to 8 metrics in each section, what really pulls at your heartstrings, and what do you really care about? And then we would compile those metrics together from each of the ExCo members to understand what at the very top level of the business do we need to measure. And you could apply that probably lower down the organisation to managers to understand what is it that you really need to know about on a day-to-day basis that's going to help you manage your team, help you be more effective, help you deliver more to customers. What is it that's going to help you? So quite often I try and go back to the business and ask them those questions and get their feedback as well.
Don't assume right?
Yeah.
Go and ask them what they want. And as an extension of that around the metrics, what we've done as well in Workday is we've released something called Workday benchmarking, which basically customers, when they sign up for Workday, they can opt into the benchmarking service. And what that means is their data goes into a benchmark pool of data. It's anonymized, but then for these key metrics, you can obviously within Workday report on your own metrics, things like time to hire or percentage of females in leadership roles, all these different types of metrics. But if you've signed up for benchmarking, you then compare your metric to the benchmark pool. And that's just part of the service. You just have to opt into it. So I think that's quite interesting. And I think we've got more than 450 customers have signed up for that. And the more customers that sign up, the more valuable it becomes. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy, I suppose. Euan, I don't mean to sort of be lazy here, but the next question is definitely for you in terms of where should you start?
Yes. And you'll be happy to know we're signed up to benchmarking, of course. So getting in there as soon as we can.
Yeah, good.
So for me, I've built analytics teams from scratch for about 3 different companies now. So I think the first thing for me is making sure you've got dedicated resource, because wherever I've seen companies trying to do good report analytics with part FTE or with somebody who's distracted by something else, it's just never really worked. So I think the first thing you need to do is really show your commitment to report analytics by making sure you've got the resource in place. If you're an enormous company, that might be a big team. Like I know GSK have got a pretty big team. If you're a company of our size, it might be 1 or 2 people. If you're a very small, small to medium sized enterprise, then it might be half a person. But actually making sure they are committed, they have that time, half of their time to do that report analytics is fundamental. I think then I would probably start off with a bit of a gap analysis. What do we have today, and how can we rationalize that and improve it for the future? For me, quite often, particularly when it comes to building those standards and the foundations, less is more. So, 100 bad reports is not helpful for anybody, but actually 15 very good, strong reports that are flexible and provide exactly what the populations need is something that will really take you to the next level. So that's really what we've done, is try to take back control. In fact, when I was speaking to Western Union yesterday, they were saying that they've given access to build reports to lots of different groups all over the company, and of course it's created a mess. So the first thing they need to do is take back the access, have some governance, have some really good controls and standards around data and reporting, and from there, they can really start to build some expertise and start to train people on how to use the reports and how to utilize the data effectively.
You sent a shiver down my spine as you said take back control there.
Yeah.
We're not going to go down that road. Okay, so change board, Euan. Any more questions from the audience to share?
Yeah, we've got another three. So one is that GDPR aside, is there any risk that employees would react negatively to the process of gathering data about them? And if so, how can a company mitigate that? We've got a second question about AI. We couldn't have a webinar without mentioning AI, so it's the buzzword of the moment, but what impact will AI have on people analytics? And then the last question is about where are the people analytics requests coming from in the business? So who are the main stakeholders? Are there particular parts of the business that are asking for this more than others?
Great, thank you. So I'd like to take that first one, and then you can add in.
Excellent.
So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
GDPR aside, the risk that employees are not going to be happy about you collecting their data and what you're doing with it. And I think as employees, you probably all have that concern. And I think personally, it's all about trust and transparency. I think you need to be absolutely clear what you are doing with the data. Nothing should be hidden, nothing behind the curtain done secretively. I think you need to be absolutely clear what you're doing with that data. And I think if you look at the use cases that Workday is building into the solution around the machine learning and so on, they are all positive use cases. It's about trying to identify employees who may be at risk of leaving so you can retain them. It's about helping recruiters by prioritizing job requisitions. It's about having an auto curation of skills in the skills cloud using machine learning. These are all positive things that we're doing with analytics. So I think it's important, be absolutely transparent what you're doing, build that trust with your employees that you are only doing good. And the thing is as well, if you deviate from that path, it can destroy years of work. So that would be my response to that. You in anything?
Yeah. And I was going to add, one of the things that we're doing is obviously particularly for candidates as well as employees, but just being very transparent and making sure we very clearly communicate to employees, what we are storing, why we're storing it. And again, I think, making sure they can see and have access to their data in Workday is half of the battle. So we developed a report for employees to run that kind of exports all the data that we have on them, and we have some processes in place so we can actually purge employees if they want us to purge their data. Same for candidates, and we have those built to the country regulations. So for me, it's about being very open and honest with the employees, making sure they do have access to the data and you're not hiding anything away from them, but then also making sure you've got the processes in place. So if you do get a right to be forgotten request or a data access request, then you can provide it very quickly and very easily. So that's kind of what we've done to prepare.
Good stuff. And then the second one was the impact of people analytics. So AI on people analytics. Obviously, AI is the next generation, if you like, of people analytics. And let me just I should safe harbor this. So I'm going to talk about future plans for Workday. The future is uncertain. Plans can change. So please discount what I'm going to say from any purchasing decisions. But in Workday 33, which is coming out in September, we're going to release something we're actually calling, or the plan is to release something called People Analytics, which is actually our first implementation of augmented analytics. And this is an interesting area. And the idea there is, one of the problems with having People Analytics is there are loads and loads of metrics. How do you know, as an executive, which metric you should actually be paying attention to? Which one is important? And the idea with augmented analytics is it uses various machine learning techniques to try and understand the data, understand the different metrics, how they link together, understand your business. And it will then start pushing to the user the metric that it believes is the one that the user should be looking at, the key metric. And it not only does that, it will also provide the backstory to that metric to try and explain why is that metric going up or going down. So, AI is going to further enhance people analytics. Some of that capability will be built into the solutions. Some of that capability, some of our customers will build themselves. But I think, AI is all about predictions. It's about taking data to make predictions that are hopefully and generally more accurate than humans can make. So it's to augment the employee, to provide them with more accurate predictions, and then they make the judgment to make the decision. Euan, anything to add?
I think that's great. I think just conscious of time, I'll jump on to the last question, which was around where do the majority of requests come from? And I guess my answer would be they seem to be coming from everywhere at the moment. So we, generally speaking, I would say, once we started to build more mature reporting analytics capability, we start to see more requests coming out of the woodwork, because once we build a really good, HR dashboard that is providing, excellent information to the leadership team, then suddenly another person wants one, another person wants one. So quite often you can become the victim of your own success sometimes. But that's in a good way. And, we send our metrics, and we quite regularly get requests from HR leadership team, from the ExCo, from the Run Committee, finance are always asking and looking for HR data. And the other thing that we need to consider internally is Workday, being our source system of record for all people data, feeds everything really. So it feeds Active Directory and all of our IT systems, feeds all of our finance systems, and enables some of our financial reporting. So there are a lot of other groups that do have a stake in the people data, and where we can do it, we sometimes, for example, finance, we will give them access to run their own report self-service with limited access to data in Workday. So we'll try and, again, drive self-service and automate that. But the nice thing is really, when you get the request coming from right at the top level, so the CEO, CFO, regularly actually asking for metrics that they can start to monitor and track, and very inquisitive about, where we might have opportunities in the business or challenges in the business as well. So I would say we probably get requests from everywhere, but it's really about how we try and drive self-service so we can do all of those requests, and then also how we work with and deal with those different customers to make sure that they're satisfied and happy as well.
Fantastic, and I think we've run out of time. So thank you to Euan. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Euan, thank you very much for your contributions there and taking part. Thank you everyone for joining, and if I hand back to Change Board, Euan, to close it off.
Fantastic. Thanks so much, guys, and that's perfect timing because it's just struck 3 o'clock. So thank you so much again to you, Richard from Workday, and Euan from Smith Nephew for the presentation, and thanks also to everyone else who's made the time to join us today for this webinar. I really hope you'll join us again for a future webinar. I'm sure we'll be having a lot more. But for now, from all of us at Change Board and Richard and Euan and this Euan as well, thank you, and thank you.